our charge is to start thinking about how we could leverage a consortium, informal as it is, but a consortium of the scope of GOMERC, to think about how we can build and sustain community among underrepresented students. And so there were a lot of amazing ideas, and we really tried to build on the phenomenal guidance that Dr. Warner provided. But it's critical. I think that one of the critical ideas that emerged was, regardless of whether we're talking about students or we're trying to engage MSI, our partner institutions, it's really about identifying what they need in order to have a very mutually beneficial relationship. And so several people in the Zoom had these conversations with their students. What is needed? What do you want to see from us? And having let me pull back. Fundamentally creating genuine mentoring relationships, building real and respectful collaborations among PIs at the grassroots level to help us identify students and encourage their professional development along the graduate school pathway, finding ways to better communicate to undergrad students what graduate school actually is, and the process for identifying a graduate program, but also the critical need for mentoring individuals. And so I put that down because one of the ways that was communicated back to us at Texas A&M was that the students were frustrated with the kind of the gatekeeping mentality of, this is how it was for us, and a one-size-fits-all mentoring pattern. And this idea has come up over and over again throughout the course of this workshop, that it's critical to mentor individuals and not just have a blanket and potentially biased mentoring strategy. Finding ways to leverage social media, Facebook mentoring platforms, science, Twitter, and particularly in a regional context. And then we got to ideas about intentional networking and mentoring among each other and among the GOMERC institutions, with a matchmaking plan that could potentially pair up assistant professors at one institution to undergrads or grads at another institution, and vice versa, so that we're interconnecting our mentoring structures and community building structures, and also building relationships and pathways among our institutions. And I'm going through this really quickly, but the other idea that, and I'm going to volunteer to do this, but being able to host regular and relatively frequent networking and community building conferences that potentially rotate among our institutions, so that we can bring together our underrepresented students, provide them an identity-based, but also scientifically based forum to build their networks. But this also in turn gives each of us the ability to showcase our institutions and our capacity and our faculty, so that we're able to show to undergrads the different grad pathways within the GOMERC institutions. And of course, the grad students can see postdoc and future faculty opportunities at our various institutions. And of course, that helps perpetuate the community building, as well as strengthen the engagement and engage the talent of the underrepresented students in our area. Chris, would it be okay if I asked anyone else from Breakout 2 to weigh in if I failed to capture an idea?
Sure.
Okay. Would anyone else from Breakout 2 like to augment that very quick summary?
Is that a yes you want to, Christy, or you want to say something?
I was just saying she did a pretty good job. I mean, I can just double down on the idea that I brought up, which is basically, you know, I see something like a 5-year mentoring program kind of based out of GOMERC, funded by some kind of NSF, like golden program, something like that from the geosciences, and where you pair, like she mentioned, different professors from across the Gulf at different universities and see them through from maybe undergraduate all the way through into graduate school. Obviously, there's lots of details. I just pulled this one right out. But yeah, something like that is actually has teeth, and we could build on that and everybody could be involved in some way. So just trying to provide practical ideas.
Let me just offer an observation relative to that. The programs at NSF that would typically support these kinds of activities are in education and human resources, not in geo. And it's too bad, because I wish geo were more engaged in the education side, because I think they'd be more sensitive to our topic areas. And I'm just wondering whether we'll be successful if we go to NSF for that kind of funding.
Yeah, are you familiar with the Geo Leadership and Diversity Gold program?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Is it out of geo?
It's called Gold.
Okay. I've heard of it, but I'm not deeply familiar with it.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of lines like that. But yeah, and also National Academies is an obvious route as well.
I think that might be our big hit, although they're very reluctant to give out money, I've noticed.
And I'd be willing to explore what foundations might be excited by funding this type of effort. I mean, it's sustainability at its core, right? So there should be some major foundation that might get behind this. So that's something I would love to look into as well.
David.
Okay. A lot of overlap with what Breakout Group 2 was talking about, especially on the mentoring side and networks, building the network. We did have some discussions though about, and Chris, actually, you brought this up. Why is it so tough to, get into the academy, right? I mean, what's the issue there? And we had a number of people chime in, and a big part of it is it's a tough market, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tough market, but that's where mentoring and networks and relationships, really play an important role into, making the best of a potential candidate stand out to a potential hiring committee, right? So I think doubling down on those mentors and that networks are critical. We did talk about mentoring, but a little bit more on the training side of mentors. Just the idea that, we tap somebody on the shoulder. We want, Professor X, we want you to be a mentor, and then kind of push them forward and expect them to be successful. Some may, many may not. And so where are there resources? How can we identify resources to help with training of the mentor to be successful? There were a couple of experiences. I can't remember, maybe David had said this, USF has had past experience with mentor training, so we can maybe pull upon that, those groups that did that. Also, I know Isaiah was talking about the work that he's done in the past. So I think that's critical. I mean, we assume everybody just, talking outside this room, there's a lot of people that can be strong mentors, but just need maybe some help and some training. I think Layla maybe framed it this way. There's a lot of people that have really great intentions, but they just need a little bit more training and experience. Also, Nikisha brought this up, and thinking about bringing students in to the graduate programs, that students seem to be a little bit more timid nowadays. Christy, I see your hand up. I know you finished this thought. I just saw it. Students seem to be a little bit more timid nowadays. So, pulling out from them, what they're really great at. You're not going to maybe get that always in an essay, and maybe you're not going to see that in other parts of the application. So the interview, or I wouldn't even call it interviews, the multiple discussions that we as faculty members may have with the students are critical to see really their possibility, their experience, and their track of success. Oh, you were clapping, Christy. Okay. I thought you were raising your hand. But then let's see. This was, I want to give credit where credit's due. Kelly Dorgan, I think, brought this up in her experience with the NAS Gulf Program's early career training fellowships for faculty is something that maybe GOMERT could also look as a model. I mean, they're obviously continue with that, but they can only service so many students or so many faculty, junior faculty a year. Why couldn't we actually amplify that and grow that out? So that may be something that we could go back to NAS and say, listen, we know you have your program. Maybe we can take on, a similar model, but tailor it a bit differently. So that's,
or maybe they could double up on it.
Or they could double up on it, or we could bring the power of GOMERT to them, saying, we think you ought to double up on this. Yes.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yep. Even better. I'm sure I missed a few things. So I would ask, just like Debbie asked her crew, I would ask my crew what are some of the highlights that I might have missed.
I don't have anything to add. I thought you did a good summary.
All right, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about NAS. So I put together a draft letter proposal to send it to Don Bosch, and then he swiftly sent it on to somebody else, and I've never heard anything since. And I'm wondering if I may not be the best spokesman for this group when it comes to NAS. But I do think that we need to put sort of a summary together of what we did in this afternoon's session and send it to them with some ideas that we think they ought to champion. And an obvious one is to double up that wonderful program that some of us have had success with. But there are other things that need to be done. I mean, we talked about postdocs and how important it is to give students a landing place for more mentorship, to amplify what they got in graduate school, and to get a chance to build their resumes so they are more competitive for the tight academic market, which incidentally I think is going to open up a bit with a lot of retirements coming, and also with people recognizing that it's about time we paid a little bit more emphasis to diverse hiring. It's clear that we're certainly headed in that direction. And as April says, we try to look now more at the whole individual than just an aspect of their CV. So that's something we can consider doing. What other ideas? Debbie, you got a lot of ideas all the time.
Well, I think so much, this has been such a rich conversation. It's going to take a little while to distill through, but I think there's so much we can do with each other to facilitate recruiting at all levels. Brandy made the brilliant point about undergrad research opportunities and how critical that is to recruiting and retention in STEM, all aspects of STEM. And so thinking about, summer programs where we have exchanges of students coming to our various institutions. But I'm particularly fond of thinking about how to keep our grad students in the academy or on the path to their doctorate with the promise of postdoc opportunities waiting for them.
One thing that Zoom does open up for us is the possibility of better interinstitutional communication. And we might do something with just graduate students, for example, and not limited to just graduate students of color, but to try to bring everybody together to try to tackle this issue and think about ideas. And another point that hasn't been mentioned that I've talked about a lot, we have a program called Environmentors, which is for high school students, and we bring them in and we mentor them to try to get them through high school and into college. And we've had a lot of success. We actually had, in the last decade, 12 complete college, which is pretty amazing because it's a small program. But in that, I always talk about the concept of paying it forward. in that each succeeding generation is taken care of by the previous one. And that is really, really a pretty important point. We've tried to cascade our mentoring from faculty to graduate students, from graduate students to undergraduates, and then from undergraduates to high school students and the like, because we feel that connection is a good one that they can make. So programs like that, I mean, I can't say enough about Environmentors, but it takes a lot of work. It's a hard program to pull off.
This is Camelia. I'm sorry, I can't bring my camera on. It's not, it's messing with my connection. But two things I wanted to say. First of all, I mentioned the authentic research, but I was envisioning it a little different, not just to have something for the students to do in the summer, but having the relationship with the minority serving institutions where you actually have real relationships between PIs that will foster a way of getting students from the undergraduate serving institution to the PhD, master's PhD program, but you're also building capacity so that those faculty members who are at the smaller institutions can continue to build so that they are able to work with students to give them, make sure they have certain basic skills so that when they get to the PhD granting institution, they're not starting from round one or maybe just had an REU experience for the summer. So, but I also wanted to mention, and I didn't want to put her on notice, she doesn't know that I'm going to do this, but as the dean, I guess I can still do this. I'm still technically the dean at Xavier. I saw one of my colleagues online, Dr. Florestina Peyton Stewart, and I wanted her to mention, if she doesn't mind, telling about the mentoring training program that we have here, because we have an advanced grant at Xavier, because we know that if we're going to increase the number of women and underrepresented, other underrepresented minorities in the professoriate, we had to do something and be more intentional. So they competed for a advanced grant. And one of the things that our faculty now have to do in order to work with our undergraduate students and some of our graduates, we do offer a number of graduate programs, is they have to go through this mentoring training workshop. And they talk about things like implicit bias and preconceived ideas that you may have, imposter syndrome, things that our students sometimes struggle with. So I don't know if she's still on the line, Florestina, I apologize, but you're probably the best who can speak about that program. If you're there, could you just share with the audience what it is that that training, mentoring and training program is? And if she's not there, she may have left.
I'm here.
There,
I'm here.
there.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Flo.
We do have something at Xavier. It's called Preparing Mentors and Advisors at Xavier, and it's called PMAX. And what it is, it's an 8-hour training session or workshop. And I'm actually one of the facilitators. Well, I used to be one of the facilitators on a certain in a certain area, and it's on our website. And I'd be happy to talk to you guys about it a little bit more in detail, or put you in touch with the person in our center who actually leads the activities. But as Dean Okpodu just said, in order for a faculty member to serve as a Build Scholars mentor, it's mandatory that you go through this training. And I'll just be brief. One of the aspects of the training is talking to our junior faculty members about first establishing a relationship with the student. Not only are you going to foster that relationship with the student, but what does that look like? What are your expectations? So I always, the portion that I facilitate is what are the expectations? And I use a contract. Some of the mentors were very opposed of a contract. So when I'm giving my presentation, I explain that, okay, this is a binding contract between myself and my students. My students get to read over the contract and see what are my expectations of them. And we go through that, and that's before you even join the lab. So I like my students to work in the lab between 8 and 3. You know, maybe I have to leave at 3 because I have other things going on. So that allows the students to know the professor's schedule. I ask my students to turn in weekly sheets, weekly reports every week. Why? So that I can know, what did you do this week? Because what if I had a hectic week and we can't meet one-on-one? But that weekly report allows me and the student, me over the weekend, to read through their weekly report, and then us to engage in an awesome dialogue about what you did last week and what you need to do to move your project to the next level. And it causes us to have a relationship. It causes us to have meeting points. And it's not just your regular routine lab meeting, it's our one-on-one. And then my students feel like they're a part of the research, because it's not Dr. Peyton Stewart's research lab just all about me. It's about all of us, because my research can't go forward without them. So, and there are other aspects, as she said, we talk about biases, you know, how they come up and how you can address them. Not every mentor is going to look like you, and how to navigate those conversations, because we're an HBCU and you have these summer programs. Let's say LSU, they have a summer program. We need some of your students. Well, now I have to prepare my student for the environment that they're about to go into that's very different from Xavier. So I heard a lot of people talking about mentoring, and even in our side session, it's about having impactful, intentional mentoring. And you can't do that without, I'm not saying you have to know my whole entire personal history, but without getting to know your students. Remember, these are the individuals who are going to be carrying out, I like to say, my baby. My research is my baby. That's my pride and my joy, right? They're going to be working on the things that you care about. So you want to get to know them so that they can move your research forward. So one thing I did want to say that I didn't say in our breakout session is, one thing I did not hear people say, we talked about mentoring for junior faculty. We talked about mentoring at the postdoctoral level, but someone just alluded to what I'm trying to say. We have to be intentional. So if I have a student who's working in my lab and someone at LSU is doing similar research, and that's my collaborator, we spend a lot of time talking together as PIs, but when do we get our students involved, whether that's at the undergraduate level or the graduate level, again, so that they can feel a part of the project. And so it would be easy for my student, when it's time to graduate, to say, I want to go to LSU because that's where I feel comfortable at. See, a lot of what studies have shown, and what I can tell you, because it's a lived life experience, it's not that Black and brown individuals or minority individuals cannot do. It's that they don't have that sense of belonging, you know, and it matters to them if I'm happy where I am. The research can be going well, the classes could be going well, but I'm not happy.
Yeah.
We really have to take the time out to factor that in. So I'll be quiet. I know I talk fast and I know I said a lot.
Well, I just wanted to comment. There's a lot of talk about unconscious or implicit bias, and that exists, to be sure. But there's another thing that people don't talk about very much, and that's traditionalism in academia. There's a lot of implicit or unconscious traditionalism, and we just do things the way we do them because that's the way we've always done them.
Yes,
That's
we don't want to think
things-
outside the box, and that happens a lot with senior faculty members. I hate to say it that way. And you don't want to try something new. For instance, all of us had to shift gears to online teaching, you know, but that's not the way we've always done it, but we're moving forward. So it's having workshops and training sessions to get people to think outside the box.
It really is. And let me tell you, as a dean, I know all too well how hard it is to move the mountain. It really is. It's a very traditional enterprise.
Yeah.
I just
I would
wanted to
just-
say amen. That's all.
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up to that. That was an incredible take on things. But I would say that to what Chris, you were saying, like traditionalism. But the problem is that the people that need to hear this to be better mentors are never the ones sitting at the table, right? So how do we get, and so this is the challenge that I'm kind of sitting with right now. How do we get the people to the table who need to be at the table? Because every time I speak about DEI or anything, I'm looking at a bunch of people that don't need to hear it, right? Like, how do we get to the people that need to hear it to the table and make them think that this is also just as important as
Yeah,
being.
well-
Deans require it.
Well, and
Let me tell
Christy,
you.
your point is so important because not only is it falling to those who already get it, but it's falling on the shoulders of people who don't need the burden of additional service.
Yes, yes.
And that's why it's really important that there are deans in this room or senior faculty who already have the security of tenure. And it's up to us to take this burden off off the students and off the early career faculty to make sure that they're empowered to thrive without yet something else to do that takes away from their time. And then someone telling them, why are you spending your time doing this? Because that isn't what's going to get you tenure. And that's bull.
But let me tell you one of my pet peeves, as well as we're airing our burdens, is when we try to hire faculty members, we have faculty meetings in which they rank the prospective candidates. And some of the people don't even go to interview the people or don't hear their seminars. All they do is they read their CVs and count publications, and they'll vote just on the basis of that without having a clear idea of what the real human being is like on the other side. And we've got to figure a way to break that down. It just is debilitating to academia, I think.
That's one of the things that I'm working on now through our advanced grant. I was actually 2 years ago, I was placed in a position as our diversity fellow. So one of the things I did was revamp our whole entire search and hiring process. So you have to have evaluation criteria in place so that individuals cannot just go in and look at someone's publications. And you can't just have the evaluation criteria in place. You kind of, sort of, honestly, you have to have a safeguard. Someone like right now, while we're in this meeting, I'm getting emails from all of my search committees for me to approve their evaluation criteria, their rubrics. I have to look at how are you going to be evaluated and assessing each one of these applicants, and it's all based on the job description. I mean, so it has to be intentional. And someone said, how do you get the other people to the table? If you can make it mandatory, you have to incentivize. And a lot of times they're not going to come, but you work with the individuals that you do have, and the other old guys, they're going to get left behind.
We also had an advanced grant at USM for several years. And one of the things that we had talked about and other advanced institutions do is in their hiring procedures, they make sure that their pool of candidates matches the pool of graduates that year. So for example, if you don't have enough women in your pool or you don't have enough people of color in your pool, the provost does not approve your search. And so again, it's really about leadership. And when leadership decides this is important and that our hiring pool needs to look like the graduates that year, it encourages people to look beyond sort of their own clubs and the people that they know who are typically people that look like them and actually get a decent net of who the good candidates are going to be that would be as diverse as possible. But again, it has to be at that provost level approving a hiring procedure and approving those funds. And this has to be something that's important to an institution.
Well, we're getting close to the bewitching hour, I guess, and I would like to just sort of sum up everything and set the stage for the next step. Kathy, can you put the next slide up? So outcomes for the broader GOMERC DEI initiative. So what are some of the things that we had thought of before? Raise awareness among URM students in the geosciences about opportunities for gainful and impactful employment. That's certainly something that we think is important. Identify promising undergraduate students for recruitment in the geosciences graduate programs. Improve student mentoring, which has been a consistent theme of this meeting. Develop research experiences for undergraduates programs and student exchange programs, some of which, as we've been talking about today, could be virtual. Fund graduate assistantships for URM students, and I would add to that postdocs and things like that. So what other outcomes would we like to add to this? I think that's the big question. And I would leave it to the breakout chairs to come up with some bulletized lists of things that we could add on to this. And then I think we ought to have a kind of a steering committee come together for the Quo Vadis part of this, what comes next, where are we going? And we can meet in a week or two and just discuss what the next steps are. How's that sound, people? Pretty good or not right? Okay. Who would like to join me on this venture into the next step? Debbie?
Oh, I'm in.
Count me in, Chris. This is Layla.
Layla? Christy?
Yep.
Flo? Flo?
I want to help too at Auburn, but I'm also going up for tenure, so I might be told by my supervisors I'm not supposed to be doing this kind of stuff.
Stephanie, you're exactly the type of person
Okay.
that
Yes.
we need to protect. So
Okay, because I mean this is the stuff that makes me excited about my job. So
I will pick your brain up, but not burden you with the service.
And if you don't get tenure, call me.
you don't know, you might get a call.
How far west are you willing to go?
Okay, anybody else?
I'll help Chris.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Chris, this is David. I'll jump in as well.
Okay, Kathy, I hope you got all the names down because I wasn't taking notes, but we have a transcript, I believe.
Who was the one after Flo? Before David?
Stephanie Shepard. I'm at Auburn
I
University.
got Stephanie, but there was somebody
Okay.
between Stephanie and Dave and
Oh, sorry.
And Julie Swickla.
Jula. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. And with that, any final words what do we forget? Anything we need to do? Was this a worthwhile way of spending your afternoon? I hope. I don't know. Let me know. If you have comments, how we can improve it, I would love to hear them. It was hard to put together, I'm gonna tell you that. It really was hard. And I can't tell you how much Kathy and Hannah were there to make this happen. They really lubricated everything so that it worked right.
Oh, I'd like, if I could chime in and also thank Kathy and Hannah, and of course you, Chris, for bringing us together in the first place.
Well, thank you very much. And what can I say? I really appreciate everybody's really thoughtful comments. This was, for me, a lovely experience. And it's fun seeing people who've been in my past. Peter Betzer, I've known for almost 50 years, for example. And he's just a marvelous guy who's done great things. So it was really fun having him there. And seeing Larry Robinson after a few years is good, and others. So it's been wonderful. All righty. Well, with that, I will close the proceedings and thank you again.